My name is Jacqueline Polliff, and today I'm going to show you how to tune a pedal harp. Now, you might already know how to tune a harp in general, especially if you've been playing the lever harp for a while, but there are some key differences between tuning a pedal harp and a lever harp that we're going to go over. In one way, tuning a lever harp and tuning a pedal harp is quite similar, because in both instances you want your strings in the longest position possible. So on a lever harp you would put all of your levers down. You do not want your levers engaged before you begin tuning. And on a pedal harp, you do the same thing, only do it with your pedals around the base. So you put all of your pedals in flat in their topmost position, which makes the string in their longest position. None of the discs are engaged on the strings. With your strings in the longest position on the pedal harp, you end up with slightly different pitches than what you would have on a lever harp. So because all of your pedals are in flat, this would be a C flat, a D flat, an E flat, an F flat, and so forth and so on. Everything is flat. If you're tuning by ear, this is pretty easy, but if you're using an electronic tuner or a tuning app, it gets to be a little bit more complicated. Whenever you're working with an electronic tuner, it displays the letter of the string as part of its tuning process. So, for an example, if I go ahead and put a pedal in natural just for a moment here, I'll put the D pedal in natural and play the D string. You can see in the top left corner, it showed that it was the letter D for a D natural. Now you would expect that when I put the pedal into flat and play the D string again, it will show it as a D flat. But instead, it's showing it as a C sharp, because C sharp is another name for D flat. You can see the C and then the little tiny sharp symbol right after it. So every string, C flat, D flat, E flat, and so forth, has an additional name that your tuner might recognize it as. So, for example, if I play the E flat string, it's picking it up as a D sharp. The G flat string is an F sharp. The A flat string is a G sharp. And the B flat string is an A sharp. Most confusingly, the C flat string and the F flat string become a B natural and an E natural. So if I play the C flat, the tuner just calls it a B, no flat or natural involved. No flat or sharp involved. And if I play the F flat string, it calls it an E natural, not an E sharp or an E flat. So to make matters even more complicated, it depends on what tuner you used as to exactly which name it will show. So here I've switched tuners, and we'll see what sorts of names this tuner uses. So first I'm going to play the C flat. It shows that as a B natural. It's calling the D flat a C sharp. The E flat, it's calling an E flat, so that one is the same. The F flat is an E natural. The G flat is an F sharp. The A flat is a G sharp. And then the B flat is a B flat. The important thing to remember is that each string has two different names, and your tuner could use either of the names. Basically, electronic tuners are made to be universal. They can work with any instrument. They are not harp specific. So usually they use the names that are more common. If you were playing the trumpet or the flute or the violin, the names would make a lot more sense. But the harp is a bit of an unusual instrument, so frequently they don't use the names that we would use when we were just talking among harpists. So the names are, the C flat can also be a B natural, D flat can be called C sharp, E flat can be called D sharp, F flat can be called E, G flat can be called F sharp, A flat can be called G sharp, and B flat can be called A sharp. So your tuner will use some combination of those names. When you're ready to begin tuning, it's very similar to tuning a lever harp. I like to keep my tuning key in my right hand so that I can attach it easily to the strings on the back side, and then it's just the same as any other harp. If you wind the string up a little bit more, it will make the sound higher. If you unwind it a tiny bit, it will make the string lower. I usually play the strings with my left hand while turning with my right hand. And then I like to start with middle C and tune all of my strings from there on down. Then I come back up to the D above middle C and tune from there all the way up. You can do the strings in any order that you would like, but I would recommend going in a row. So one of the challenges is that the harp is so much bigger, it's a lot harder to find the exact pin that you need. You know, if you're over here trying to tune this string, you can't see too easily where you are on the other side. So if you're just doing everything stepwise, then you can just keep moving your tuning key to the next peg and the next peg, and it's very easy to keep track of where you are. I'm going to go ahead and start tuning them from the middle C. So I'll attach my tuning key. And usually when I get about here, just a few strings below middle C, I slide my arm around so that I can reach more easily. Rather than wrapping it all the way around the harp, I just kind of go across the curve of the harp here. All of that was pretty straightforward, but now that we're down into the very lowest strings of the harp, we have a problem, which is that the tuner does not pick up the strings. They're too low for it to register the vibration, and actually we'll have the same problem with the very top strings. Most lever harps have a smaller range, maybe say like from here to here, so it's no trouble for an electronic tuner to pick them up. But when you get to very low or very high frequencies, tuners no longer can register the sound. I should mention that this is a full-size pedal harp. It has 47 strings, the largest possible size. So if you have a slightly smaller pedal harp, you might not have a few of these strings at the bottom or at the top, in which case this will be less of a concern for you. But, so what you have to do when your tuner stops registering the strings is you have to tune by ear. Most people do that by tuning in octaves. So we're going to start with this lowest G string here. This is the one that we want to tune. I'll go ahead and get my tuning key set up. And then I'm going to play this string an octave above and use that as a reference in terms of sound to get this bottom one in tune. Sometimes people also play the note a fifth in between so that they can hear all of that, or sometimes once you think you have it in tune, you can play both of the notes right at the same time and see how it sounds. And then you need to do the same thing with the F string. And then the same string, the same thing with the E string. So now just when you thought it couldn't get any more complicated, we're going to throw one more wrinkle in there. And that is that the bottom two strings on this harp, the C and the D, are not connected to the pedal mechanism. There's no action or discs for them, meaning that they do not change between flat, natural, and sharp. And this is standard for any 47-string harp. The lowest two strings are never connected to the pedal mechanism. If you have a smaller harp, say a 44-string harp, then you probably don't have these strings, but your lowest couple still might not be connected to the mechanism. You can just look and see where your discs stop to know which strings are connected and which are not. So then what you do in this instance is you tune them to a pitch and you just leave them there for the entire piece that you're playing. For example, I think the Hindemith Harp Sonata uses a low D flat for this string and a low C natural for this string. So then you would go ahead and use your D flat an octave above to tune this, and then make a C natural here and use a C natural to tune this string. That's the standard way to tune those bottom two strings. In this instance, I'm just going to go ahead and tune them in natural. So I put my pedals into natural, my D and my C pedal, and then I'll reach up, get my tuning key attached, C. Now, if you're having a lot of trouble tuning these strings down here by ear, you are not alone. Most students, when they first start playing the pedal harp, find that difficult to do because it's just very low. It's difficult to hear it clearly. The best thing you can do, of course, is to practice, to keep trying to tune them using octaves and seeing how they are. You could also ask your teacher for some help. Sometimes you could also try playing a scale to kind of get a sense of if you're in the right area. So you could maybe start and just keep coming down, down, down like that to see sort of how it sounds. So it can be a bit frustrating, but I would say stick with it. It definitely gets easier to tune those really low strings by ear the more that you do it. So now we have the whole bottom half of our harp from middle C on down in tune. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this D above middle C and start tuning on up. And it's going to start out, and it will really be pretty easy at first, just the same as tuning any other harp. I've made it all the way up to this A, the highest A on my harp, and the tuner has stopped picking up. Just as it stopped picking up the low strings, it now will not register these very highest strings. And all tuners are a little bit different, so you might be able to make it a tiny bit higher or a few strings lower. But at this point, I'm going to start tuning by ear. And I'll do it just the same way I did with the low strings, only flipped around. So I'm going to be tuning this A string here, and then I'll use an A, an octave lower, as a reference note. And then sometimes checking in between with the fourth or the fifth. Now for my very top string, once again, I do not have any mechanism. There's no discs on that string to change it from flat to natural and sharp. That's actually a little bit unusual. This is an older harp, and that's more common in older harps, but the newer ones do have a mechanism on your very top string. So you don't have to do anything special with it. You can just tune it the same as the rest of them. For me personally, for this one, then I have to tune the string either to flat, natural, or sharp, however I'm going to use it within the particular piece that I'm playing. Once I've tuned everything, then I go ahead and play a few C-flat major scales just to double check that it all sounds good by ear. Like so, and then I keep going for all of the octaves. If you've just switched to a pedal harp from a lever harp and you're finding tuning this a little bit overwhelming, that's very normal. Most people do find it to be a bit more challenging on a lever harp. One, because of some of the reasons that we discussed, tuning it in C-flat and having to tune the bottom and the top by ear. But also pedal harps tend to be, I think, a little bit more sensitive than a lot of lever harps, so they just need to be tuned slightly more frequently. But of course, the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more frequently you tune, usually it's then easier to just keep it in tune rather than having to get very out of tune and trying to bring it back. So good luck to you in your tuning.